Every year, we all sit down to watch what is basically the Super Bowl of gaming events, the Game Awards. A show that aims to celebrate the best in gaming, but often feel more like a popularity contest driven by marketing budgets and sales rather than a true reflection of innovation and excellence in the industry. For what it's worth, the show has become a pretty major cultural event with over 4 million concurrent viewers this year, bringing players, creators, and industry professionals together to celebrate gaming with good old Jeff Keighley at the helm of it all. It's a big show, and when they conceived it, they probably didn't think it was going to become this big. With this year being its 10th edition, it's got quite a legacy, and as the show grows ever bigger, it's under more and more pressure to live up to whatever expectations the internet has set upon it. It's easy to get swept up with the crowd and question the integrity of what the event sets out to accomplish. Is it truly celebrating the developers behind the games, or is it just one big ad reel? The last couple of years, there's always been some kind of like controversial things surrounding the event. In 2022, people were upset that Sifu was nominated in the fighting game category and didn't feel like it belonged there. In 2023, people criticized the lack of time for developers' acceptance speeches and the general focus on game reveals rather than on the developers themselves, making the event feel very corporate and soulless. And this year, a standalone DLC got nominated for Game of the Year, a nomination that was made possible by changing the rules of what games can be nominated. There's also a question of like nepotism, seeing as how Jeff tends to constantly involve friends in the industry such as Hideo Kojima, favoring some developers over others. For what it's worth, these controversies highlight the challenges that the Game Awards face by organizing such a big event that maybe unwillingly self-imposes its own importance, often being compared to being the video games version of the Oscars. But in stark contrast to the Oscars, new movie trailers are not typically premiered at the Oscars, whereas on the Game Awards, this is one of the biggest prime times for game trailers and promotions of new games, and typically that's the focus of the show. But this is maybe why most people actually tune into the Game Awards. It's what most people are interested in seeing, and it's basically what funds a show like this. The discussions afterwards are rarely about the awards and winners. It's mostly about the world premieres or, any new controversy surrounding the event. Like, there's no denying that this show has become a huge marketing platform for game developers, because it is a huge opportunity to have your game premiere on the Game Awards. But as the Game Awards grows bigger, it also becomes more of a walled garden. The more eyes on the event, the more expensive it is to advertise your game on this platform. And it's also up to Jeff, who is the executive producer, to decide whether or not your game that you're trying to promote belongs at the event. You can argue that the Game Awards masquerades around the celebration of what games have accomplished over the year and uses that as an opportunity to sell promotion spots and make a profit on the show. And because of the popularity of the show, these are incredibly expensive promotion slots. But you can also make the argument that if what people are most excited about is the world premieres and what may be revealed, then more eyes will also fall upon the nominated games and the people behind them. It's hard to justify making such an expensive show if they're not making something that people want to tune in to see. So it's kind of understandable that they have to try and strike a balance between these two and try and find a win-win. This show isn't just for the developers, it's also for the communities behind these games celebrating with the developers. I think people want to hear what the developers have to say, and it makes me kind of happy to see that so many people found that developers got snuffed during last year's show and wanted a change. And while I think they could do a better job at highlighting more of the people behind the games rather than the studios and the companies behind them, it is one, albeit small, chance for developers to be celebrated for their contributions to the games. It's a chance to humanize the people behind the titles. Now, would it be possible to host a show that would actually be more like the Oscars and don't have that ad feel to it? I don't know, because it's not like the Oscars are without their own fair share of criticism, and I feel like we'll never agree on the outcome of any show where they are rewarded based on something that is almost unquantifiable. Like, what justifies the nominees for the Game Awards? Like, why do they deserve to be there more than anyone else? So here's how nominations works for the Game Awards. The nominations for the Game Awards are selected by a voting jury of over 100 media and influencer outlets across the globe, such as GameSpot, GameRant, Polygon, Variety, PC Game News, VGC, Game Reactor, the list goes on. Specialized juries also convene for other categories, including esports, accessibility, and best adaptation. Each voting outlet completes a confidential, unranked ballot based on the collective and diverse opinion of its entire editorial staff, listing out its top 5 choices in each category. Ballots are tabulated, and the 5 games that appear on the most ballots are put forth as nominees. Game Awards producer Jeff Keighley is not a member of the jury and does not vote on the nominees or winners. Similarly, the Game Awards Advisory Board has no involvement in the awards process and learns of the results at the same time as the general public. Games eligible for this year's Game Awards must have been available for public consumption on or before November 22nd, and there is no formal submission process for the Game Awards. When it says like before, like available for public consumption, it sounds like you have to like eat the games. Like, The justification they give for using the jury process is that given the sheer number of games released each year, as well as the extended time required to fully evaluate products, a voting outlet approach allows for the widest possible critical assessment. A ballot submitted to the Game Awards represents the collective opinion of an entire outlet. And winners are determined by a blended vote between the voting jury, which consists of 90% of the votes, and public fan voting, which consists of 10% of the vote. As to why the Game Awards does not allow fans to 100% select the winners, they claim that creating a 100% fan vote presents several challenges. First, given that some games are exclusive to one platform, a public vote puts a single platform games at an inherent disadvantage over multi-platform titles. In addition, it is important that winners cannot be socially engineered in any way, and they find that a blended vote is the most credible and authentic way to select winners. Now, I certainly can't say whether this approach is the best. I mean, there are other award shows that do it differently. Some do 100% fan voting, and others do 100% jury picks. At the end of the day, I think it's impossible to justify whether there's a process that can accurately pick which games deserve to be the best in each category. You know, it's a weird competition, and the merit of winning these types of competitions mostly mean more to the winners than anyone else. I guess that's true for every competition though. Was Astrobot truly the game of the year? I don't know. I didn't play it. And I don't think a lot of people criticizing this choice did either. And most people probably didn't play all the other games nominated either to make a proper comparison. Did the other games deserve to win? Absolutely. All these games deserve to win. I think people underestimate how creating a large-scale video game is nothing short of a miracle given the immense complexity and coordination required to create games of this scale. But I don't think that the games that didn't win are any less worthy of these awards either. Like, no developer sets out to create a game with the ambition that like, oh, this is gonna win Game of the Year. I think if anything, this is what should be highlighted more at the Game Awards, that these developers have all made incredible contributions to their games, and we as a collective can appreciate them for what they've created rather than the titles themselves. But it's easier to focus on the artifact rather than the craftsmanship, and you know, that's not necessarily anyone's fault. I just wish that we could better take advantage of these moments to highlight this in a way that I think people would appreciate. But overall, as a show, I really enjoyed this year's Game Awards. They made adjustments to the show based on criticism from last year, although I feel like they could have, acknowledged this better during the year. And there were some nice speeches and some memorable reveals. If you didn't watch the show, here's a quick rundown of some of the announcements from the show. From Software announced another spin-off from Elden Ring called Night Rain. CD Projekt Red announced Witcher 4 with Ciri as the protagonist. During this trailer, by the way, there was a sneaky mention of Nvidia's new RTX card, which we all know is most likely the 50 series cards that will likely get announced at next year's CES keynote on January 6th. This is the worst kept secret of this year, which, to be fair, is probably only beneficial for Nvidia, and maybe even intentional? Gearbox Software revealed the next entry in the Borderlands series with Borderlands 4, promising new mechanics and next-gen fidelity. Okami 2, a sequel to the original Okami developed by Hideki Kamiya's new studio. There's also Onimusha, Way of the Sword, a reboot of the classic samurai action-adventure game set to be released in 2026, so a couple of years off. Outer Wilds 2. Outer Worlds 2 showed off some new gameplay footage. I will never not get confused by those two names. We also saw Dispatched, a narrative and dialogue-driven game. We also saw Split Fiction from Hazelight, a split-screen co-op adventure title. If you know this studio, you pretty much know what you're in for. Fumito Ueda, the developer best known for such games as Ico and Shadow of the Colossus, has revealed a first look at his next project, which is codenamed Project Robot, and a very nice cinematic trailer with a robot. And something that got a lot of attention is Naughty Dog's new space adventure game directed by Neil Druckmann called Intergalactic: The Heretic Prophets, that was shown off with a cinematic trailer as well. So at the end of the day, the Game Awards is a fun show. I don't know, it tries to strike a balance between highlighting games' achievements over the year while trying to draw in an audience by showing, or teasing what's on the horizon. It's a balancing act, and as much as they are criticized for being essentially a long ad break, I hope they can address their walled garden status and avoid being the Game Awards be only for like the 1%. But it's hard to avoid this when the event itself is arguably a popularity contest among games, and this might be inevitable when you set out to create a show like this. At the end of the day, it's a show, and we get to see some faces from some of the most popular games of the year. We get to see some game trailers of exciting new games, but for me, like, the event itself isn't what excites me, and it's not the awards or the new announcements. It's weird, but it's scrolling through Twitter and watching like developers enjoy the moment, like people who have worked really hard for the chance to be there and to meet everyone else who also worked equally hard. To some extent, I'm sure what we're witnessing is like the bourgeois patting each other on the back, but in my little optimistic heart, I really want to believe that everyone who has the chance to be there deserves to be there with their peers, celebrating one another. To me, this is what the purpose of the Game Awards should be at the very least, and to join our peers in celebration of the hard work that led to these moments. But let me know what you thought of this year's Game Awards. Until next time, take care.